Welcome to the High Value Sales Show of Eversprint.com. I'm Malcolm Louie, the managing member of Eversprint, and today we're speaking with Jay Eastland, the co-founder of Engineered Solutions of Georgia, a provider of commercial and residential foundation restoration and waterproofing. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Hey, Malcolm, thanks for having me.
Jay, you grew your company's revenue from $5 million in 2014 to $9.1 million in 2017, an 81% increase. And in 2018, you hit around 10 million. Before we talk about how you grew your company so fast, can you briefly share what your company does beyond my quick intro and how your company differs from the competition?
Yeah. So as you said, we're a foundation restoration and below-grade waterproofing company. We serve both the commercial and the residential market. One of the things that differentiates us from our competitors is that we are a true design build firm. We've got PEs on staff, full design department, so we can provide a design build service for new construction, foundation, or remediation. In some occasions, we'll also provide solely design services, or we'll work at the direction of another engineer. But having that capability allows us to be pretty nimble and to value add on a lot of projects.
So how would the other firms work if they don't have their own design team on site, on staff?
So they would typically work if it's a remediation project. The property owner or building owner would engage a independent engineer, produce the repair plan, and then that would be implemented by a contractor similar to us.
Right, got it. And what are the advantages to the customer of having a firm like yourself that has a design team in-house as opposed to them just finding someone else to do the design side of things?
Well, there's several advantages, but the biggest advantage is even if we are not the engineer of record or the sole engineer on the project, the nature of our business is such that we're dealing with problems that are underground that no one can see. So they aren't always what we thought they were when excavation is done and we can actually see what the problem is. So when things differ from what we anticipated, having design services streamlines those changes. We can work much more efficiently with the engineer of record. We can propose alternative solutions that have been through our engineering department, so that it's much easier for the engineer of record to understand and sort of digest those scope changes, and we're able to design things that we can build efficiently. A lot of times when you're dealing with engineering only, those guys may present us with designs that are more expensive to install than some of the things that we've over the years of trial and error have figured out. So that's another advantage that we can bring because we can value engineer some of these repairs. Right.
Now, your company specializes in foundation restoration as opposed to new construction. Is that right?
That's correct. About 80%, 85% of our business is existing structures. And then we have, 15 to 20% of our business that's involved in the new construction.
Okay. And for those who aren't in the construction business, such as myself, can you give me a sense as to what sort of problems people have with their foundations and how your team can fix it?
So the biggest thing that we deal with is differential settlement. So I always explain it like this. When you build a building, if the building settles uniformly, you never know it. All the finishes continue to match and you don't see cracking. It's when things settle differentially, a portion of the building stays in place as another portion of the building settles. That's where we get damage. we get cracks around doors and windows, cracks in exterior rigid finishes, brick, stone, stucco, cracks at interior rigid finishes, the trim joints, backsplashes on counters in kitchens and baths, tile floors, things like that.
And it's due to the foundation not being perfectly level, due to the foundation shifting over time?
So the our wheelhouse is 5 to 7 buildings and shorter. And so what happens when we build bigger buildings, we take those foundations all the way to bedrock, and those foundations are resting on competent rock. When we build smaller structures, the soil is actually a component of the foundation. So we design these buildings based on a bearing factor of the soil that we're placing them on. And sometimes that bearing capacity of the soil changes due to changes deep in the soil. Whether there's organic material in the soil, whether the composition of the soil allows it to consolidate with changes in moisture content. There are several factors, but as I said, the difference is when we design buildings, and I mean we as the general construction market designs buildings where a portion of the foundation load is carried by soil, they're susceptible to some subsidence if the soil characteristics are either change or are not understood at the time of design.
So typically then the most common problems you see, is it simply the foundation no longer being level and it's now kind of tilted a little bit, or will part of the foundation break and shift because of the underlying surface it's resting?
Well, both. The foundations are generally built with rigid material, concrete. And so concrete will bend some, but it won't bend a tremendous amount. So yeah, we see that the concrete actually fracture. And fortunately, we don't deal with catastrophic collapse. That's typically not the problem. The problem is typically loss of service of the building. The first thing that happens is very cosmetic. You get cracks around doors and windows on the inside and on the outside. You get cracks in tile floors. And then if the foundation movement isn't addressed and it continues, then you start to get windows that won't open and close properly, doors that won't open and close properly. And then if it's allowed to continue, we find we get deficiencies in the building envelope. We get leaks around doors, windows, and in some cases leaks at changes in roof pitch. So as it continues to move, it continues to do damage and does more damage not only to the foundation but to the rest of the building envelope if it's ignored.
Right. And is there a typical solution to solve these problems?
They're pretty varied, but I guess to break it down in its simplest form, what we do is we take the load that's placed on the soil and we either transfer that load deeper to some competent soil, some soil that's able to carry the load, or we have some processes where we amend the bearing capacity of the soil itself, actually compact the soil while the building's sitting on it.
And is their solution just keep the problem from getting worse, or can you fix it such that doors and windows open and close properly?
We can always keep it from getting worse, and we can often return it, if not exactly where it was, to close to where it was. The thing to remember is every time there is a cosmetic repair done, that cosmetic repair is going to make it more difficult to return the structure to its original level. So if you think about a crack in brick, So a crack in a brick joint develops, and it's unsightly. So you put more mortar in that crack so that you don't see the crack anymore. Well, then when we go to lift the building back up, that the mortar that is inside that crack is actually binding and fighting against us and lifting the building up. So the fewer cosmetic repairs have been done, the easier it is to return the building as close as we can get it to its original position.
Right. And when you solve the foundation issues, do you have to dig out underneath the foundation, prop up the building, do whatever you need to do, or are there less manual ways of getting it done?
So it depends on the access. There are less manual ways of doing it, but sometimes we don't have a choice but to do it the manual way due to access. Adjacent buildings cause access problems, adjacent structures, property lines, things of that nature, sometimes make it difficult to get large equipment onto a site.
All right. Yeah, this the work you do is not something that most people ever see unless you're in the business, I reckon.
Yes, we have to convince people to literally pour money into a hole in the ground.
Right. Now, you grew your business pretty fast over the past few years, from 5 million in 2014, and you pretty much doubled it 4 years later in 2018. What were the three drivers behind that growth?
People, and people.
Okay.
Louis Cuevas, my business partner, and I say the last thing that we did by ourselves was write a business plan. Every success that we've had after that was due to a contribution on some level by someone else. So, okay. People are really they're the driver of the business, and they're the most difficult resource to recruit and retain.
Now, I imagine there's be some people in some functions that move the needle a bit more. Can you share what those functions were?
Yeah, so we've got a sales force and a production department that have grown and continued to rise to every challenge that we've issued. So those are the two parts of our company that have been most integral in growing our business. Okay.
And how about on the sales force side of things? What did they do that really nailed it? Was it, were they able to get new customers that drove your growth? Were they able to get more business from existing customers? Were they able to land it?
So our business is such that we don't have a lot of existing clients. So customers have an issue with their building. We come out and fix their building, and as long as we do our job right, we're probably never going to see them again. Now, there is some reoccurring business through property management associations, general contractors, folks that see similar problems through other properties. But as a general rule, once we fix it, it's fixed. So our guys are tasked with identifying new clients.
Okay, so they did a good job. What did they do to find those new clients?
So I shouldn't have slighted the marketing department, who was also integral. The sales guys have done a really good job of designing meaningful repairs that folks could afford. But our marketing department has also done a fabulous job of getting our name out and building brand recognition for us. Okay.
So your sales force is really good about coming up with solutions that people can afford. And then on the marketing side, they were really good at getting the brand out so people know about you guys.
Right.
Okay. Can you share a little bit about how your sales force are able to design meaningful solutions that people can afford?
Yeah, so we're in a sort of an unusual niche. It's it's construction, but it's different every time. So when you frame a house, you have a set of plans and you frame the house to the plans. But when we're doing foundation repair, we have plans for the house or the building that may or may not be correct. But we don't have a set plan that we're implementing for repair, because each repair problem presents a unique and different set of challenges. So we're fortunate to have guys who are quick learners, and we were able to early on in Engineered Solutions Life, we were able to bring together a group of people who have worked together in the industry over the last 25 years, really. So I'll kind of switch gears a little bit and tell you a little bit about how Lewis and I, or how Engineered Solutions came to be, and that answer may make a little more sense. Lewis and I worked together at 3 other companies over the course of about 13 years before we started Engineered Solutions. And we started Engineered Solutions, I guess, like anybody that starts a company, is we thought that we could do it better.
Right.
So the result of that time together in the industry is, we have people in our office. Engineered Solutions will have its 13th birthday on August 16th. But we've got people in our office that we've worked together for 27, 25, in some cases almost 30 years. So we were able to gather a group of industry talent that is unmatched.
All right. Yeah, definitely. And in your line of work, a lot of it, I imagine, comes from experience, right? And there's no real cookie cutter solution.
There's not. That's right.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that the third of the 3 groups of people, you mentioned production and marketing, and you just mentioned marketing recently about how they got the brand out there, get people to know about them. Can you talk about a bit more about how they did that, how they are doing that?
Yeah. So the biggest thing with our advertising and marketing has been consistency. From the very beginning, we had a consultant, for lack of a better term, agency maybe, sit down with us and explain to us that, and I don't know who actually said it. I've heard it attributed to many people, but they said, listen, 50% of your advertising is going to be a total waste of money, but I can't tell you, nor can anyone else tell you what 50% it is.
Right.
But we've spent a lot of time and effort trying to figure that out. So we look at advertising in 2 ways. We look at brand awareness and we look at lead generation. And so on the lead generation side, it is easy to track what's working and what isn't. And so we've tracked that diligently, and we've reorganized our budget dollars as we have discovered things that worked. Things that worked, we did more of. Things that didn't work, we did less of. The brand awareness side of it, it is kind of a shadowy beast, because you can't be sure what it is that is actually working. So we have agreed to a percent of revenue spend, and we have been diligent about maintaining that percent revenue spend. If you came to my office today and asked me to spend the dollar amount that we spend on advertising right now, I would tell you that I couldn't afford it. I wouldn't do it if I could afford it, and then I'd throw you out of my office.
All right.
But when you look at it as a percent of revenue, it becomes much more easy to digest. We spent that percent last year and the year before, and so we can afford to spend that percent again. So that was some really good advice that we got, is to look at advertising as a percent of revenue as opposed to a raw dollar amount.
Yeah. I think another key aspect is viewing advertising and marketing as an investment as opposed to an expense.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, if you see it as an expense, then it's just a dollar number, right? But if you could see the value that you're getting from it, then it changes the equation, right? I mean, if you're investing $1 in your advertising and you're getting back $2 of business, right? You're going to want to just crank it up as much as you can.
Absolutely. Well, as much as you can service, right? Because,
right.
I could double our incoming call volume with, $1 million. If I spent $1 million in additional advertising next year, I could increase significantly our incoming call volume. But if I don't have a sales force to service it or a production department to service it, then I'm gonna, at best case scenario, waste the money on those on that activity that I've brought, and on worst case scenario, I'm gonna anger those people because I'm not going to be able to service them at the standard that we've set. So that's the real challenge when I talk about people. Is the part outside of people is a relatively easy mathematical problem, equation, but it's the people that really makes it complex.
Yep, I hear you on that one. And at the same time, right? I mean, there's some reputation effects too, right? You don't want to be known as the company that can't deliver. That's going to have some long.
Exactly. Well, you can't, because you'll stop winning bids.
Yep. Now, I did take a look at your digital footprint. I didn't see any pay-per-click advertising going on right now. And SEO traffic wise, I'm seeing the value of the traffic according to my tools is not bad. It looks like it's a few $100, $500 worth of traffic coming your way on certain keywords. What's your take on digital marketing and how it would help your business?
So we have a significant part of our business, of our budget, that is pledged to SEO.
Okay.
SEO is a very important piece of the puzzle. We've been in and out of the pay-per-click game. And what we've proven to ourselves time and time again is that it is more expensive and less effective than our SEO stuff. We when we first started, that's all we had was pay-per-click. We couldn't afford to do anything else. So we poured the bulk of our budget into pay-per-click, and we loved it. We thought it was great. We were killing it. And then as we started to spend more and more on SEO, we found that our SEO results were really overshadowing our pay-per-click results.
Okay.
And we use pay-per-click now as we're building. We have some weather phenomenon that are very good to us in terms of business-wise, especially on the waterproofing side. So, for instance, in Atlanta, where we are, 18 was the wettest year or the second wettest year in recorded history, which energized our waterproofing business. And so that's been great. We had a fantastic 18, and first quarter 19 was unbelievable. But as we get out of this wet weather pattern, there's going to be a little bit of a lull in leads. We're not going to maintain the inbound call flow that we get during really wet time periods. So we'll use some SEC here and there, or SEM here and there, to juice up that lead flow, because we don't want the mass that we put on during this very favorable weather pattern, we don't want to lose that mass. So we can, that's the way that we can do pay-per-click.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, take it out strategically when you need it.
Right.
So how many qualified leads are you getting from SEO each month?
That's a really difficult question, because the SEO, the internet, to a certain extent, is the phone book, right? So years and years ago, we take out a big ad in the phone book, and regardless of how customers were familiar with us, they'd be flipping through the phone book and they'd see Engineered Solutions. And because we built that brand awareness through other medium, radio, TV, billboard, a number of different things, we would seem familiar to them, and they would call, and we'd say, how'd you hear about us? And they'd say, I got you out of the Yellow Pages. Well, we know that it wasn't just a big Yellow Pages ad that generated that call volume, right? It was those other things that allowed us to be top of mind when they got to the Yellow Pages.
Right.
The internet, to a certain extent, is the same thing. So we, we look at our analytics and we see the traffic, and we see traffic increasing. So, we know that is part of it, but we believe that it's really pretty closely tied to brand awareness too. When they do a search and we come up with 3 or 4 of our other competitors above the fold, and they pick us, they didn't just pick us because of where we showed up in the ad placement or in the result placement. They picked us because we seemed familiar.
Right.
That's the shadowy part, right? What have we done in the 12 years we've been in business to seem familiar to these customers?
Right. So what's our sales team doing and marketing team doing to do more outbound marketing and get clients, as opposed to inbound, where people are finding you through whatever means and calling you up direct?
Yeah, so we have a business development arm that we don't really consider it a function of sales, although it is, and we don't really consider it a function of marketing, although it is. But what we've done with them is we've identified other industries that can be referral sources to us. So we said, all right, and this is primarily on the residential side. We said, okay, we're in basements and crawl spaces. That's where we do our work. That's where the foundations are. So who else is there? So, we said the termite guy, the guy that finishes basements, the HVAC guy. All those people are in the areas that we work. So let's look at some type of arrangement that we can have with them so that if they see something that we can address, they mention it, or if they're approached, if the homeowner sees something that needs to be addressed and they're approached, how can we have a trade understanding with these other vendors, so that they'll say, hey, if you have this problem, you should call Engineered Solutions. So we're doing that on the business development side.
All right. And are you able to track how that's working in terms of referrals that are being generated?
We do. We track it as activity. We haven't. We've been. This is relatively new. We started in fourth quarter of 2018, and the first sector, I guess, or trade partner we looked at was real estate agents.
Yep.
Because real estate agents are, every house that's bought or sold goes through an inspection. So any problem is validated to a certain extent by that inspection. Those problems are almost always repaired before or as part of the time of sale.
Mm-hmm.
And in our business, those leads were historically thought of as, third tier leads. So we said, all right, why is that and how can we fix that? So we developed an outreach program that we've been really successful with that has allowed us to identify good agents, like-minded folks, and we have seen tremendous growth in that piece of our business.
Right. Is that the biggest source of new business that you foresee will be coming from these strategic partnerships?
It's in the top 3 for sure.
Right. Okay. What are the other 2?
Well, are you talking about the business outreach or just in general?
In general.
Yeah. So the internet still gets credit for quite a bit of leads. That's probably our largest lead source. Although we, as I said before, we understand that or believe that that's not solely SEO and solely internet marketing, that there's a brand awareness component that we have to be thought through. I think one of the most exciting things is we started a category that we just call branded lead. And the folks that go into that category are folks that call us and we say, how'd you hear about us? And they say, I think I might have, I don't know, maybe I saw a billboard, maybe my neighbors use you, or I might have heard you on, they're not sure where they heard us. And
right.
Those are some of the leads that we get most excited about, because they don't even know why they wanted to call us. They just know that they did. And as we see that category increasing month over month and year over year, it gives us some level of confidence that we're doing the right branding efforts.
Right. Got it. And now circling back a little bit, we've talked about the salespeople and how they help grow your business, the marketing folks. Now, how about the production department? That was the third category of folks you talked about. And what do you mean by production department?
So those are the folks that actually go out and install the repair.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we've got what we do is really, really hard work. I mean, it's hard physical work. To find a combination of, we need a strong back and a strong mind. And we've been successful identifying that combination, which is not always easy to find. And the other thing that we've done is we have kind of flipped the model, so to speak, on how these guys get paid. Traditionally, installers in our industry or any other industry were just paid straight by the hour. And what that did was incentivize them to put a lot of hours in. And what we did in 2011 is we switched that model and we made it an incentive-based model, so that they were not getting paid for the hours they spent. They were getting paid for the revenue they generated. So when we switched to a shared revenue model, production increased by 35%, almost overnight.
Nice. Now, how did you ensure that the quality is maintained?
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because you're right. The first thing that happened was we got work done, 35% faster. And the second thing that happened is we had a spike in warranty issues. So we made the understanding that warranties were going to be fixed outside of time, and so they were going to cost you days. And as soon as everybody realized how expensive it was for all of us to repair these warranty issues, that cost settled back down.
Right.
And really, relatively quick. Within 2.5 months, we got through the spike in the warranty, the adjustment to take care of it, and it got back to being a tremendous decision. What we say this, we have a saying that we use across our entire business, and that saying is track, measure, adjust. And so we say that any process, no matter what it is, if you want to improve it, there's two ways to improve it. One is luck, which is really undependable, and the other is to track your performance, measure it against where you want it to be and where it's been historically, and adjust your efforts to get where you're trying to get with the process. And so we've kind of applied that to every single thing we do.
Right. Now, in terms of finding people, you mentioned that was a challenge as well. How are you going about finding people?
So what we're doing now is we started to look at people. We have a really stable group of people at everywhere except for the entry level field position and the entry level sales position. The entry level field position, there's a lot of turnover because, as I said before, it's hard work and it takes a certain type of person to do this work. So we started looking at those two labor needs, just like we would look at the sales needs. We said, hey, we've got to manage a pipeline. So we sat down and looked at what percentage of the people we hire stick, what percent of the people that we talk to interview, and then how many folks do we need for our growth plan. So we sit down at the beginning of the year when we're setting our budget, just like any other budget, we set a labor budget, and we say we need to hire X number of people per month, and we need X number of interviews in order to hit that goal. And we've worked with a outside recruiting service that we just kind of kept on retainer, but we've recently moved that function in-house as part of our HR.
Okay. Do you find that a lot of the qualities you're looking for, you're not able to screen for up front, right? Because you said before you're looking for someone who has a strong body and a strong mind, right? Some of those things are quantitative, can be quantitatively measured, but quite a large part of it is qualitative, right? And you might not know until down the line if they have the right stuff.
You're exactly right. We think the interview process is actually about 60 to 90 days long.
That's when people typically say this isn't the right thing for me.
Yep.
All right. Switching gears a little bit, looking at 2019, what do you see is the biggest opportunity for 2019?
Continued growth. I think that we've been diligent and dedicated with our messaging for the last 12 years. And so I think that we're starting to pick up steam there. I think we're taking market share, and I think that we can expect more of that this year.
Okay. Is there any particular segment, niche that you see some great opportunities where you can jump in and get the market share?
So we've kind of looked at that, and we have some competitors in our market who've gone to gutters and roofs, and they've taken on other product lines. What we feel is right for us right now. We don't think that we've taken all the market share out of our core business yet, and we think that if we just continue to get better in our core business, we've got a 3 to 5 year plan before we feel like we even need to consider branching out into other trades.
Okay. So for your core business, what's the plan on finding more foundation work, right? Because typically they're one-off. Your 80% you said or so was on remediating errors. I know you talked about finding strategic partners to help with referrals. You have your branding that's bringing people in from, difficult to say from what source. Are there other ways of getting more business for you that you see especially attractive that you can take more advantage of?
Well, there are the things that we can't control, such as weather. We had a great weather year last year. We don't anticipate, we typically don't have favorable weather years multiple. So we know that we're going to have to fill that void. And we've talked a little earlier about some pay-per-click as a managed to lead that inbound call void. But the other thing, we're very fortunate in that we're in a very forgiving climate. We don't have wind events that they have on the coast. We don't have deep freeze events, so that that would affect buildings. In more harsh climates, the industry is forced to build a better product to withstand those harsh climates. Well, in Georgia, we don't have those harsh climates. We have very forgiving building climates, which allows folks to build a lesser quality product in terms of buildings. So, being in that repair business, there are folks that are building jobs for us 5 to 7 years down the road right now as we speak.
Right. So in terms of challenges, what's the biggest challenge you see to to hitting your growth target? In fact, I didn't ask you about this, but for 2019, what is your growth target numbers wise?
We think that we can. We look at a couple of things. We look at a revenue goal and a sales goal. We think that we're going to be right at 12.5 on the sales goal, and then we think that we can install about 11.7. And so that's a little bit different than I think maybe the way some people look at it. So we want to look at, hey, what did we sell? And then, hey, what were we able to install?
Right.
And we always want that sales number to be a little bigger because we want to have a somewhat of a backlog of work, but we don't want we don't want a huge difference between the two numbers because we don't want, there's a sweet spot in terms of the backlog of work, which is around 3 weeks for us.
Okay.
So that's where we expect to be this year.
Okay, so the 10 million we talked about before they hit in 2018, that was your installation revenue.
That's correct.
Right.
That's
okay. All right, good. So you're looking at about 17-20% growth of your revenue. Nice. And what's the biggest challenge? What's the biggest obstacle you see that's in your way that your team needs to overcome, climb over, demolish to achieve that goal?
So people and competition. Because we had such a favorable weather climate last year, there are companies that have, we say they're like weeds. When we get a bunch of rain, waterproofing companies sprout up like weeds, and then when it dries out, they shrivel up and die. So
right.
Be some competition that's introduced into the market this year, and some of it is not going to be good, but some of it is going to be really good. I mean, we came into the market 12 years ago and we've turned out to be fierce competition for some other folks. And it's naive of us not to assume that there's some other guys that are probably smarter than we are that are about to start doing it and are going to be competition for us.
Yeah.
And it's not just competition it's not competition for the business. It's also competition for all of the resources. It's competition for the people,
Yep.
So I think competition is something that we're always mindful of. And then, recruiting and retaining the right people is something that is always difficult. I would say those are our two biggest challenges.
So we talk about the recruiting side. That's really at the entry level, right? That you're referring to.
That's right.
Okay. And tell me about retaining. What's the challenge on the retainment side? Are you talking about retaining the young guys who are going in at the entry level, or are you talking about retaining the more seasoned folks?
Well, both. Both. We think that there are a couple of pretty simple means to retention. They're not simple to enact, but conceptually they're pretty simple. We feel like we need to have a very positive place to work, where people feel like they can thrive and grow. And that sounds cliche and sounds easy, but it's really not. So you've got to hire with that in mind, as well as with just core skills in mind. The other thing that we feel really strongly about is that we've got to create a model that allows people in our industry to make more money here than they could make anywhere else. So that's a challenge. I always say if you pay somebody, then you always have a risk of resentment. God, I'm paying this guy too much. Why am I paying this guy so much? But if you create a model that allows him to earn, then all of a sudden that resentment disappears, because you don't look at it as paying this guy. You look at it at what he earns. So if you can tie all of your compensation back to growth or whatever behavior you're trying to drive, then you can create a place that is at the upper end of industry pay scales.
Yep.
And that's what we want to do. And that's much easier said than executed.
Yep. Yeah, what you just mentioned now reminds me of another conversation I had with another show guest, where we had a discussion offline about how some business owners don't view marketing as an investment; they view it as an expense. And the CEO of the other company goes, those same people probably view their people as an expense as well, as opposed to an investment. And I think that's kind of an interesting angle, right? Because your people are an investment because they're the ones that are generating the returns for you.
Absolutely. I mean, if you until somebody figures out how to make robots that can do this, back to what I said earlier, the last thing Lewis and I did by ourselves was write a business plan.
Right. So you were not in the thick of things from day one. Then is that what you're saying? You hired people to do it for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we started. When we started, it was myself, Lewis, my business partner, and two other guys. So Lewis and the two guys installed everything, and I sold everything.
Right.
We were very much in the trenches, but without our first two employees, Lewis and I couldn't have generated the revenue that we needed to feed ourselves. Right. So from the very beginning, we had to have good people.
Yep. Totally got it. So in regards to the competition, right? You have new competition coming in. What do you got? What's their team going to do to combat them, to keep them from gaining market share from you? How are you going to outsell them, outmarket them?
Well, we're just going to continue to, and this again sounds like a cliche answer, but we're going to continue to get better at what we do. Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue to attract and retain the best people. And if we can do that, then we can do battle with anyone that comes to town. We feel like we've got a good footprint as, kind of the local guys. We grew up in the area, and we feel like that we've got a good story. We have good community involvement, and we feel like the best way to deal with competition is for us to continue to get better and better at what we do. Right.
And now, in terms of finding more new business, that doesn't sound like it's a big challenge for you guys, or a pressing challenge.
It's not. I mean, we have, and I'm not saying we're the smartest guys in the world, because we're not, but we have a formula that has proven to work for 12 consecutive years. So every year that it continues to work, I continue to have more faith in that model. So and we're in a big city. We're in a and we have a lot of people. We have a lot of construction going on. So, our market is very favorable for additional business.
Right. Now, how would you describe the formula that you talked about? I know that we touched on different aspects of it during our conversation. When you have the marketing side, the branding side, you're introducing a referral element. What other bits of the formula are there?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Talk about the formula to generate new business for you. How would you summarize that formula?
The marketing piece, dedication to 1% of revenue, and we consider every person that we come in contact with an interview. The nature of our business is such that, and this is kind of an example more than an answer of a mindset, the nature of our business is such that about 10% of the folks that we see, residential or commercial, they don't actually need us. It's something very simple, or it's not a structural crack, or they saw something on TV about sinkholes and they got scared and they called us. So we have a choice when we're in those properties with those 10% of people that we can't service. They don't have a problem. So the way some of our competitors address it is they're like, yeah, listen, you don't really have a problem. Thanks so much for calling. See you later. What we say is we provide all of our customers with an experience, and there's an experience to us telling you don't have a problem. And that experience takes a little bit of time. We need to do some diagnostics. We need, even if we recognize immediately that they don't have an issue, we need to take them through how we know that they don't have an issue, so that they don't feel like we just rushed through it. We give them experience, and we call that a commercial, because there are a couple of things that are going to happen. Maybe we were wrong and that was the beginning of a foundation problem. They're going to call us back because they had a positive experience with us.
Yep.
Or maybe their next door neighbor is going to have a problem, and their next door neighbor is going to say, who should I call? And they're going to say, have engineered solutions out. They came out and told me I didn't have a problem, but they took me through it. So every person we kind of come in contact with, we consider that a little mini job interview.
Yep.
And then the other philosophy that we have is we have a sign coming out of our meeting room that says remember who your boss is, and that we say, we've all had bosses that were difficult to work for, and you didn't feel like you could do anything right, and then we've all had bosses that really motivate us and made us feel good. We got a good news, bad news scenario, because you have both of those kinds of bosses. Because your boss is the person that's on the phone the next time it rings, right? And sometimes that person's going to be reasonable and nice and motivating, and sometimes he's going to be really difficult to get along with. So we force ourselves, as well as all of our people, to understand, who the real boss is, who really has the power to make us or break us, and that's the customers.
Right. Speaking of signs, the signs that you just mentioned, if you were to have a billboard somewhere in Georgia, what would your billboard message be? And keep in mind, people typically only have about 6 seconds before they drive by a billboard. So it generally has to be pretty to the point and pretty short.
Yeah. So our billboards say cracked foundation ? Wet basement ? Engineers on staff. And then they have the phone number and engineered solutions. So we want it to be, why should you call us? Well, you should call us if your basement leaks or if you have a crack in your foundation. That's the need. And then what's the quickest thing that we can say that differentiates us from our customer? We have an engineer on staff. So that's that very succinct message that we use on billboards. And going back to that brand awareness thing, when I look at the ROI on the billboards that I have, if it was just about ROI, I'd stop doing them tomorrow. They don't pay for themselves, right? I can't look at my billboard invoice and the amount of business that it brings me and justify continuing to have a billboard up. But I do know that over the last 12 years of spending that consistent percentage on marketing and having that percentage spent on a blend of mediums, that my raw lead count has gone up every single year.
Yep.
Can I tell you that I'm getting the ROI specifically dollar for dollar on billboards? No. But do I believe for a fact that they are part of the equation that gives us this brand awareness that allows people to pick up the phone and call us? I really do.
Yep. Are you comfortable sharing what your percentage of revenue you spend on marketing?
Yeah, 8%.
Yeah. How did you and your consultant come with that number?
Well, he wanted to spend 15 and we wanted to spend 5.
Okay.
We looked at some industry standard stuff, and we looked at, what that consistent spend has done in terms of generating the leads that we need. And we'll play around with it a little bit. Usually what we say is we're not going to go over 10 of our last year's number, and we'll budget 8 of our increase. And that's, it's a little bit of a shadowy number. There have been years where we've spent more, and there have been years where we spent less.
Right.
Depending on, because there have been years, we've had years where we grew 38%, and we wanted to pump the brakes just a little bit because we felt like we were growing too fast to maintain our quality.
Right. Now, when you say 8% of your revenue on marketing, what do you lump into marketing? Is that just strictly advertising and your digital marketing, or does that also include the salaries and what you pay your salespeople and marketing people.
No, and really, to be more accurate, it's really an advertising expense as opposed to a marketing expense, because we don't have our business development salary in there, and we don't have any of our business development efforts in there.
Right.
But our primary driving force is advertising.
Right. And I know you talked about a number of different channels you're using. Can you share with us what the channels you're using? I know you're using billboards. I know you're doing SEO. I know you're doing pay-per-click now and then. Yep. What else are you doing to get?
We do radio. We do cable television. We do some kind of a little bit different. We do some retargeting, which you're probably familiar with that term, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but we market based on keywords. We do they have these home improvement books in our market that are direct mailed. We do we have some consumer advocate type folks that we work with. And then, we try to do a lot of our stuff. Like, we're on a lot of high school scoreboards, and we're on a lot of high school baseball fences, some of that sort of, kind of grassroots guerrilla type marketing we still do. And we feel like that's pretty successful.
Okay, great. So you covered quite a few bases here. I mean, I can't think of anything here other than what else? What are you not doing? You're doing direct mail. You're doing cable TV. I guess then by cable TV, you're meaning those smaller channels? Okay.
Yeah, because we can surgically strike television advertising by zip code, because we can do it through cable outlets. So we have stayed away from network television because it's very, very expensive.
Yep.
You've got to have a really high production value commercial.
Yep.
And we, I'm no expert, but we think that network television advertising is going to end up kind of going the way of the yellow pages, at least for local businesses. I think Coca-Cola is always going to have a voice on network television, but I'm not sure that Engineered Solutions of Georgia is going to have a voice on network television.
Yeah, well, maybe some selective shows, but not everything, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so the next thing that we're working on is we're putting together some 15-second spots that we're going to use on internet advertising. So
right.
we think that's where our television, quote unquote, budget is going to go towards.
Yep. And on radio, you're doing AM radio, FM radio, both?
Yep, both.
Okay. Yeah, Yep.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Another guest I recently had actually said they're advertising on the likes of Pandora. Which, might be interesting for you guys to check out.
Yep, we're looking at Pandora right now. It's when it started, it was really, really expensive. I don't think that they totally understood. I don't think anybody totally understood. So we, as a matter of fact, I had a meeting last week about it, and the prices have come down. The thing that I'm struggling with is how many people are, how effective is that message going to be?
Yep.
Because you can opt out of that. You don't have to listen to those commercials. So it's really about the price point. If the price point gets to a certain spot, then we'll get in, and we'll try it. But
I think the biggest value that the other show guests found from Pandora is just they have the data that allows you to track, right, exactly how many people listen to it, because they know.
And that's another thing that's interesting with a lot of these digital advertising guys, because we have a lot of digital stuff where they say that we brought you X number of traffic, we brought you X number of clicks, and what we have to tell them is, listen, we don't, traffic doesn't buy stuff from us, and clicks don't buy stuff from us.
Yep.
What we need is phone calls and appointments.
Yep.
So, like some of there are some digital opportunities out there that they're just driving clicks, and there's some vendors that, we were only able to reach 45% of the form submissions that they sent us. Now, so their whole model was drilling this funnel down to a form submission. Mm-hmm. Half of these people, they'd send us a form submission, we'd never call them back. I mean, or they would never call us back. And we email them 3 times, we call them three times, and then they drop out of our system.
Yep.
But 5% of them we're never even getting in touch with. And so they wanted, the vendors said, well, yeah, well, look at all these people. Look at all these form submissions we brought you. I'm like, yeah, but 55% of them were nothing.
Yep.
We're looking for quality.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sounds like they need to tweak their funnel a little bit there.
Yeah. So. But that goes back to our conversation earlier. What are they incentivized by? Are they they get paid for form submissions, so they're incentivized to generate form submissions. We have vendors. We have vendors where we're in a revenue share agreement with them, so they're incentivized by us closing business, and those leads tend to be much more productive than the folks who are incentivized by getting somebody to fill out a form.
Yeah, definitely. So I think for them, I'm guessing, without knowing any details about what you described, sounds like they were just targeting the wrong people to begin with.
Right.
And 2 final questions for you. Who are your ideal customers, and what's the best way for them to reach your team?
So our ideal customers are anyone with a crack or leak below the first floor in any residential building or commercial building under 7 stories. And then they can reach us through our website, which is esogrepair.com. They can also reach us at our office, which is 678-290-1325.
And is there a geography that you only work in, a region, a range?
So residential, Metro Atlanta, and commercial, the Southeast.
How big of a Southeast region are we talking about here?
So we're in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're just finishing up about a 3-month project in Natchez, Mississippi, which is just on the other side of the Mississippi from New Orleans. We had some folks in Rock Hill, South Carolina this year. We've got a couple of things in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida primarily.
Okay. And these are in your team just packs it up and heads out there for a few months, or you find
That's right.
out there to help?
That's right. Yep. We service it all from here. We're licensed, I think, in 16 states engineering wise, and we're licensed in 3 states as general contractors, although we don't function as general contractors. That general contractor's license makes it easier for us when we have to pull permits, and we win some business because we can act as a general contractor.
Right. Got it. Jay, it's been great having you on my show today. Really enjoyed hearing how you grew your company so fast.
Well, yeah, I enjoyed talking with you, Malcolm.
We've been speaking with Jay Eastland, the co-founder of Engineered Solutions of Georgia, about his company's rapid growth. For interviews with other fast-growing, high-value sales companies, or to learn how we can accelerate your firm's high-value sales through automation, visit eversprint.com.